Thank you for joining us for the Kenneth L. Johnson Show live on WPPM 106.5 Philly. Philly, what's really good? It's your boy Kenneth L. Johnson back for another edition of the Kenneth L. Johnson Show. Only thing, we're doing it just a little different today, Philly. I want you to ride with me for a minute. I don't care where you're at, Philly. If you're listening to 106.5 FM, you're here. You got us. This is a special day on the show. If you're streaming, stay locked in. If you're on LinkedIn, you probably know a little bit about today and what's happening. We are launching a new series on the Kenneth L. Johnson Show. We just stepping the game up. So with that being said, it's what we're here to do. I believe we're going to do it and do it well today. So Philly, I appreciate you. Welcome again to the Kenneth L. Johnson Show on 106.5 FM, streaming globally and airing on LinkedIn. Today marks the launch of our Executive Leadership Series, a series designed to bring you inside the minds of leaders who are opening at the highest levels, making critical decisions and shaping the future of their organizations. Listen, the leadership game has changed. The expectations placed on leaders today are very different than they were even 10 years ago. The pace is faster, the stakes are higher, and the margin for error is smaller. Many leaders just haven't stepped up their game. So in this series, we're going to explore what leadership actually looks like, what's working, what's not, and why it truly takes a lot to lead, grow, and perform in today's environment. All right, we're kicking it off with someone who has seen leadership evolve in real time. Christopher Martin brings more than 3 decades of experience in the banking industry with a track record of driving growth, leading teams, and navigating complex environments. Yeah, that's what he's doing out here. Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey, Kenny, how you doing?
Man, I'm exceptional today, Chris. Excited to have you on here, man. Listen, I'm super excited to have you on here for so many different reasons, but I'm just going to tell our audience this. I'm going to break down the relationship a little, if you don't mind.
Please do.
Before you introduce yourself, I'd just like to tell this audience, my audience in Philly, wherever you're at in Philly, just lock in and listen to me for a second. Y'all know me as a Philadelphian, true and out. I love this city. This is what I do. Been here for a long time. Germantown, South Philly, do it all. However, I was born and raised in a town called Uniontown, Pennsylvania. I was born on Uniontown's East End. Shout out to everybody from East End that's locked in today with us. And that's why I'm so happy to have this guest here. Growing up side by side with me in that same neighborhood was Christopher Martin. I've been knowing Chris since I was a toddler. I say this in all honesty. I've been knowing him since I was a toddler, and we graduated together. That's how long I've known Chris. So not only is he a esteemed banking professional, he is a friend. So please welcome Christopher Martin to the show. Chris, tell our audience a little bit about yourself, my friend.
Uniontown proud. Let's start there. I was telling Kenny earlier, my kids wanted me to wear my Uniontown Letterman's jacket to the show today. I should have done that. That would have been fun.
You rocked it. All right. Hey, Chris, we're launching and kicking off this leadership series, man. And, I wanted you to kick it off for a reason. Tell us a little bit about your career.
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you for having me and congratulations on this platform, Kenny. I'm proud of you and happy to see this, and I hope that I represent you well today. Born and raised, single parent household, Uniontown. Had a great crowd of friends around me. Many of them are still with me today. It's been a blessing. Went off to school, Westminster College, small school, Western PA. Was blessed to meet my wife there, Holly. We've been married now. It'll be 34 years this year in October. 2 children, our daughter Carly, who's 26, and our son Beatty, who's 23. Real proud of both of them, and they're on their way in their careers as well. I started my career actually on a truck. I was a route salesman for a potato chip or snack food company. And I don't discount that, Kenny. I'll tell you why, because in the journey, I learned so much from that position, so much about customer service and understanding how my work affected somebody else's job or somebody else's business, working in a team environment, about goal setting, about accountability and responsibility. I wasn't there very long, but it was baptism by fire, and I learned it quickly. But I always wanted to get into financial services, into banking in general. When I was growing up, we had it rough. We didn't have money, and and seeing my mom struggle with financial responsibilities, I always wanted to be on the other side of that, on the side where I could help people. And I knew that banks and financial services could do that. And if I was in a position, I would be able to do that as well. So it was something that I sought, and it took me a while to get in. So I finally got into financial services, and I started my training in consumer lending, and it was management training as well. And I was blessed to have a wonderful first boss, first manager, great mentor, leader, and he helped nurture me along the way and prepare me for my first opportunity to be a branch manager. So I did that, and we were consumer finance, so we made loans, and we made some mortgages, but mostly they were higher interest rate loans. And right now, those types of loans, would be heavily scrutinized. So, and that industry sort of faded away as it should have evolved differently, and it has, and I'm thankful that it has. But from there, I still wanted to get into community banking. I wanted to work in the community. I saw many buildings going up, new neighborhoods, new schools, and I knew that wasn't happening just out of cash flow, that there was banks and financing behind that, and I wanted to be a part of that. I knew that building stronger communities, building stronger schools would give people opportunity, and I wanted to give people opportunity, starting with education and with housing, and that's at a cornerstone of what we do as a bank. So I was fortunate to be hired by a community bank in Western Pennsylvania, and things sort of took off for me from there. I worked directly for the fourth generation of the family that built the bank, and she believed in me, and she invested in me. She sent me to a couple of banking schools for me to pick up leadership as well as industry expertise. And then she empowered me to learn. And although I made mistakes along the way, she didn't make me feel bad about those. She just helped me learn from those. And there was another individual in a leadership position that also invested in me and empowered me to do more, to take on more accountability. And that led to just larger roles, Kenny. I stepped into a larger position where I was a president of a region for a regional bank. So a lot more employees, a lot more structure, a lot more accountability around that, a lot more opportunity to serve the greater southwestern Pennsylvania market, a lot more exposure to the different types of talent, different types of market, different types of consumers. And then from there, I went, I parted ways with that organization. It was the right thing to do for both of us. After almost 12 years of doing that, I think they needed to change and I needed to change. And I learned a lot from that job. And one of the key takeaways for me from that position, and I know we'll talk about that a little bit later, was maybe understanding followership better. We talk a lot about leadership, but we don't talk a lot about followership. So I think I learned that lesson the most from that organization. From there, I worked for a couple of community banks, and again, leaders that invested in me, that gave me opportunities and allowed me to fail, as well as allowed me to learn from those failures and incorporate change and evolve as a leader. And then ultimately, the Lord's blessing brought me to where I'm at today. I'm at a small community bank that's been around 142 years, and we are working to become relevant in the communities that we serve, working to provide resources for home ownership or home renovation, financial literacy, in addition to the other core banking responsibilities that we have. So all of that totals that 30 plus years of time, but it's all been a blessing, and it's all been guided at the hand of the Lord. I don't want to discount that. I won't say that too many more times, but I feel blessed to have been given the opportunities that I've been given and escorted through those challenges.
Blessed indeed. And Chris, you talked a lot about, the different leaders that have helped you throughout your career. I'm going to rewind a little just because I have so much love and admiration for your mother. I spent a lot of time at your house as a kid. me, you, Tori Epps, just kind of hanging out, playing football on the side of the house with your sisters and your brothers. And, when you remember all of this, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why I was so excited about having this, kind of knowing your background and where you came from and understanding what leadership means to you. And you spoke about the leaders in your life in the banking industry. And I think that's really important as we kind of dive into the conversation here. So from your perspective, Chris, how has leadership expectations truly changed over the last decade? And where do you see leaders still struggling to catch up?
Yeah, I mean, I think, from a technical standpoint, we've seen a lot more technology, and even in recent years, a lot more AI, creeping into leadership and how we use that information, and it's reshaping business models, almost on a daily basis. It's accelerating very fast as well. It's also, redesigning how we invest in our people, invest in our staff. So I think that's one of the key things that we've had to learn over the last 10 years is that velocity of technology and what that does to us as leaders. I think that leaders in the modern era also, Kenny, have learned to become more vulnerable, more willing to ask for help, and willing to seek understanding first. I think 10, 20 years ago we had to be very confident in everything that we said and we did, and we had to be the only decision maker in the room, and we had to assume that, and we had to assume it quickly because we didn't want the team or the troops to lose confidence in us as leaders. But
Sure.
I think in today's environment, it's different. I think that we need to allow ourselves to accept that we don't know everything, and we don't have to know everything, but it's about knowing where to find that information, and about developing our people to have their own expertise and empowerment that we can lean into when we need to lean into. And I think that's more recent than it is in the past. And it's actually exciting for me because it helps cure one of those what gaps are missing out there, and that is that succession and building our teams. Because the more we can invest in our team, empower our team, and rely on our team, the more we can build succession from within the organization. I'm not saying outside the organization is bad. I'm just saying that I love building opportunities for the people that that I have on the team right now, and they want it as well.
Hey Chris, I can really appreciate that mindset, allowing people the freedom to be part of the decision-making process, right? So,
Yeah.
As we continue to kind of guide and find our way through this conversation, when you think about leading high-performing teams today, what does that actually require from a leader on a day-to-day basis that maybe wasn't critical before?
Well, we've got to be clear. Clarity, I think, is really important on a day-to-day basis, and we've got to be consistent as well. Pivoting is okay when the model requires it. Pivoting is okay when circumstances dictate that. A pandemic requires you to pivot, right? You have to do that.
Yes.
But I think what our folks are looking for is a consistency and a clarity in the message and the mission and in the vision of what we want to accomplish. And then it requires congruency. Our behaviors, our actions, our goals, our incentives need to be congruent with that messaging. And sometimes they're not, right? We tend to reward behavior. We in the past, high performers are rewarded with incentives that reward them as individuals, but are those incentives necessarily aligned with the culture that we're trying to build? Are they aligned with the organization that we're trying to build? And sometimes they're not. But in the past, I think we would allow high performers and toxic high performers because it hit the bottom line and it hit it quickly. And I think in today's world, we want to get away from that, and we want to really make sure that our messaging and the behaviors that we're looking for and the outcomes that we're looking for are all congruent with one another. And that helps to develop the high performing team, right? You're giving them the role. This is the clarity in the role. This is the expectations. you're giving them latitude and elasticity within that role to learn and grow, to make those mistakes. You don't leave them on their own. You don't let them hang out there. You step in with them. You're accountable with them, but you're helping them to grow and learn from that, and to think strategically and critically. Wow, that's something right there, Kenny, that I worry about, is critical thinking skills today. And with the advent of all this technology and the speed of the information, are we teaching the next generation to think critically, or are we teaching them just to access information? And it's a concern because it affects the overall performance of that individual long term, right?
Yeah.
They can meet short term expectations, but I really think high performing teams, though, they need that congruency, that clarity. They need you in it with them, giving them the clear direction, but not stepping in their way. Let them do their job and encourage them to do it and reward them.
Chris, I can appreciate that for a lot of different reasons. Here at East Coast Executives, we set off the year saying that we were doubling down on people. We were seeing so much automation and AI in our space of expertise. And I started to wonder who I was having conversations with. It was really that bad. And I was like, you know what? We're doubling down on people. I had an opportunity to do a networking event. I was asked on LinkedIn actually today to participate in a networking event that's taking place next week. And I turned it down because it's virtual. Like, let's get together. Let's kind of get back to meeting people and having real conversations and things of that nature. It's the Kenneth L. Johnson Show live on WPPM 106.5 FM Philly, streaming globally, broadcasting live on LinkedIn. I'm here today with Chris Martin, President, CEO, Sewickley Savings Bank. Chris, as we kind of walk through the rest of this conversation, I want to kind of lean in a little and ask you, where do you think leaders, even experienced executives, are still getting it wrong right now? What's happening and how do they need to get better?
That's a great question, Kenny. For me, and I think for some of my peers, when I talk with them, I think we recognize that we think we're doing better than we are. I think we think that we're communicating better than we are because we put out a nice memo and we have a good meeting where we're in front of the team, in front of the group, and we're communicating something. But the interpretation of that is really what matters the most. And I think that we maybe stop a little short in making sure that the next level leadership understands exactly why we're doing what we're doing. So that's one area. I want us to check our ego a little bit and not think so much that we've done so well. And I think also it ties into that, into developing talent. You said it yourself as far as doubling down on people. I'd like to see us do that better, continue to invest in the people that are on our team. I think also, Ken, that we've got to have our priorities, clearly defined, and those need to be communicated to the greater good on why it's good for the organization. And it may not be popular, and we have to accept that sometimes things are unpopular, but they are for the best interest of the organization. And we have to own that and accept that, and not be afraid to tell folks that things that we're doing is unpopular. And I think we're afraid to do that because we don't, again, want to lose trust from our team. We don't want to lose their confidence. So sometimes we stop short on being explicitly clear as why an unpopular decision was made. I still believe that, we've got to make sure that our behaviors, we're inciting the right behaviors to match the culture that we're trying to build. And I'm not sure that we've done that well enough. I think we're making progress there. I just don't think that we've done it well enough. Now, I'm sure there's organizations out there that are doing it wonderfully, and I don't mean to cast that net across everybody. I just think in general, that's an area where we're so short-term focused that those results are immediate to us, so we appreciate those, and it lets go a little bit of the long-term planning that we want to keep in place. So we're not maintaining that long-term strategy because the short term is being measured now and it's immediate.
Got it. Listen, looking back over your career, what is one leadership adjustment you had made that significantly changed your effectiveness? I'm curious about this, Chris, for a couple of different reasons, right? Because you speak about, like, you've had great longevity in your career, and you spoke about, even professional development and re-education on some of the things that were happening industry-wide. Talk to us about this. Like, where were the changes? What is even one leadership adjustment that you had to make?
Maybe at the top of that list, or tied at the top of that list, is going to be that term I used earlier, followership. And I tie under that a saying I say all the time, which is seek to understand and then to be understood. Instead of coming out swinging like I know everything and I'm going to take charge and I'm going to lead this thing all the way through, which is what I did early in my career, right? I tried to prove myself, and that's what I saw in TV and at the time leadership, and what I read in books, and take charge, right? And I think that worked during an era, but it wasn't going to work for me long term. So I needed to understand what followership meant. It didn't mean letting go of my responsibilities. It didn't mean letting go of my accountabilities. What it meant was what I said. I needed to seek to understand motivations and business models and economies and communities and people and plight and development. So it helped me shape, I think, a better perspective on what it ultimately means to lead folks, because I could see it from a different viewpoint.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. As you look ahead, you've matured, and that's what I'm hearing in that last statement. But as you look ahead, what do you believe will define successful leadership over the next 5 to 10 years?
I think I used the term velocity earlier, and I'm going to apply that to learning. I think learning velocity is going to be critical. Information and our access to it is so fast now, and there's a lot more unpredictability in markets than what there used to be. And I shouldn't say just markets, but in education, in business markets, in other economies, sub-economies that are out there. There's so much rapid change and unpredictability that I think that's going to be critically important for our success, is our ability to learn quickly, adapt quickly, and then relearn. If we haven't picked up on that since, say, COVID or a pandemic, then we're really missing out. So to me, that's one of the most important aspects that we're going to have to get our hands around. I also think understanding the workforce, right? We've got this hybrid model out there, and there's people now that are sometimes working from home, sometimes in the office. We didn't have that 5 years ago, but we're going to have it. We're going to have it more going forward. So we have to understand that, and then how to build culture when we're not in proximity is, I think, a big challenge for us in the immediate now, if not the immediate near future. I think understanding our employees too, Kenny, like from a maybe a mental health standpoint, a psychology standpoint, that wasn't always there. And it is here now, and we have to understand what burnout means to them, how quickly they can get there. How do we build our business knowing that it happens now more than, maybe not more than what happened before, but it's more out there, it's more visible, it's more spoken about.
Yes.
And I think that's important for us to understand now. I think that DE&I has made a lot of progress, and it continues to make progress because of people like you that have really put yourself on the front line there. And I hope that we can sustain that momentum. But we as leaders have to understand what that means. You would probably say this. I don't mean to put words in your mouth. It's certainly about color, but it's certainly about other factors now too, right?
Sure.
We haven't. Most of us haven't experienced a lot of that interaction and don't have a great understanding of that. But it's it's a growing portion of the labor force, and we should understand that. And I think those are some important factors. We've got to be ready to move with geopolitical, economic conditions too, because those things are just they're day by day, right? I did this research, Kenny, about 3 weeks ago before a board meeting, 4 weeks ago, that said this is what interest rates and how they were modeling pre-war. Mm-hmm. And then I did them a week after the war started, and the dramatic change in long-term rates. I mean, that was in 1 week, which is counterintuitive to everything that our governing bodies are working against, because they're trying to control it, right? Trying to manage interest rate environments and inflation. And in a week, the landscape changed. It was that radical. So that's just an example of how fast things change, and we have to be able to adapt to that.
The key to that adaptation will be leaders like you, Chris. I really believe that people that are putting people first and putting communities first, a lot of the things you spoke about in your intro, I see the through line as we kind of wrap up this conversation. Man, I'm extremely proud of you and the work that you're doing. And I just want to say thank you for coming through and hanging out with us on the Kenneth L. Johnson Show.
Thanks for having me, Kenny. I appreciate it.
Man, listen, I know we need to get together real soon, but I want to close this conversation out, Chris, by speaking a little bit about what this is all about, this Kenneth L. Johnson Show leadership series. I appreciate Chris taking the time to join us and just sharing his perspective. I knew it would be great. I knew it would be interesting because I know him as a person. But conversations like this are important because leadership is evolving, and the ability to adapt, what Chris was speaking about, is what separates those who sustain success from those who struggle to keep it. For everyone listening, this is exactly why we created the Executive Leadership Series. This is not about theory. It's about real conversations with leaders who are doing the work, making decisions, navigating complexity in real time. If you're serious about growing as a leader, advancing your career, or building high-performing teams, you belong here. It's the Kenneth L. Johnson Show. Make sure you stay connected. Follow the show on social media. And join us each week as we continue these conversations with some of the world's top executives. I love this work so much because I get the opportunity to speak to people like Christopher Martin. Trust me on this. We're going to continue to bring some of the top leaders across industries to the show to have conversations that hopefully enlighten you on some of the work that's being done out here. Hopefully allow you to make decisions with a little more insight. And that's really what it's all about. Allowing us in your home, in your car, on LinkedIn, whatever it is, just allowing us to share in a conversation about how we make the workplace better. I didn't set Chris up for that conversation and ask him to speak about the importance of equity in today's workplace. But I think for him, it comes from a sincere part of his heart. I know how he grew up. I know what's important, and I know the kind of person he is. And I think that's a legit piece of information that he shared at the end. How are we going to continue to adapt in a changing environment, whether it's just in our communities, whether it's geopolitical, across the board? How do we adapt? And then the responsibility of people that are leaders to lead the way in those conversations. You've been listening to the Kenneth L. Johnson Show on 106.5 FM, your home for career, culture, and community.